Once upon a time there was a man who loved the flute. He loved playing the flute wherever he went. Outside, inside, under a tree, in his bedroom. He just loved playing the flute. Unfortunately, his brother did not love the flute. His brother hated the flute, and every time the man who loved the flute, let's call him John, played the flute, his brother, who we'll call Charlie, would leave the room, because he just couldn't stand the sound of it. He, in fact, had a bad attitude about John's flute playing. But what he did not have a bad attitude about was his garden. He loved his garden more than anything else in the world, and he would spend most of his time out there taking care of his plants. But one day Charlie went out to his garden, and it was full of ants, flying ants. And the ants were eating all of the vegetables in the garden. They were nibbling at the tomato plants, and at the celery, and the lettuce, and the spinach, and they were even eating the marigolds and the daisies that were planted along the border. Charlie was frantic. After running around, waving his arms in the air for a few minutes, not knowing what to do, he decided to ask his brother for help. So he ran to his brother, who was playing the flute at the time, and he said, "Brother, my garden is being destroyed by ants. What can I do?" So John ran to his brother's garden, because he knew how much his brother cared about his garden, and the only thing he could think of to do was play the flute. It could possibly be argued that John was a little bit too focused on one thing, but in this case, his focus on the flute paid off, because the ants followed him when he played the flute. All the ants stopped eating the vegetables and the flowers in the garden, and they flew over to John, which made John scream and run away and stop playing the flute. And as he stopped playing the flute, the ants stopped following him and went back to the garden. So John played the flute, and he ran at the same time. The ants followed him, and he ran all the way to the woods down the street. When he got there, he stopped playing the flute, and the ants stayed in the woods. Charlie's garden was saved. Charlie was so thankful that he learned to appreciate the flute. It took him a long time, but he did it in the end. The end.